Yeah.
Really. So from their point of view, they're like, oh, you did that last year. You're doing this year.
Cool. What inspired you to get into theater or theatrics? Yeah,
Nothing
long time
really.
ago.
I'm really not. I'm near theatre, but I've never. I didn't really know much about theatre. It all began actually when I guess two things happened. One, I was studying computers at university, and I remember watching someone going, "I will never care about this as much as you do." And then the particular course I was doing, you would study for 6 months and then work for 6 months. And I found I was turning up every day at like 10 to 11 and leaving at 3. So I'd gone from being a pretty good student at school to being like the worst employee. And clearly, and I remember this guy who was really nice, he was like, "You're quite clever, but you really need to work." And I'm like, "No, I think you've got the symptoms, but not the treatment. What I need to do is do something else." And then I saw this documentary about a guy becoming a stuntman, and that was like my earliest ever like ambition to be a stuntman. And I had basically the thing that they described was they talked to this guy who ran like the stunt registry in England, and he said a lot of people don't realize how much work it was to do it. And I was like, this life that this guy has, he's spending every day training in like martial arts, gymnastics, all these other things. And I'm like, that is what I would do to stay sane in a job that I hate. Because I was already like a kung fu black belt, and I had a sort of acrobatics background, and I was like, well, do that instead. And the guy who's in the documentary has since gone on, like he was a stunt arranger on like Batman Begins, and like he's a big deal. And it's quite weird seeing him on the DVD extras because he's still British. He's still he talks like that. Like I met him briefly. I was like, right, the gym, and I went to the gym that he went to, and the guy that ran the gym said, go to Covent Garden, make yourself a street show, and then you'll get your equity card by doing that, which is one stage. And it was going to Covent Garden that that's where I found the stuntman thing was like a means to an end. In my mind, I didn't really understand how it all worked. It's a very British thing, apparently. I felt I was insulting any performer. If I had ever just said I want to be an actor, it would be an insult to anyone who'd ever been an actor. And also, I thought you have to do it since you're 2, and otherwise it's too late. In performing at Covent Garden, I sort of basically found the things that I wanted to do. So the stuntman thing kind of was like this weird little excuse. I tricked myself into, and it was like the first decision I'd ever made in life. Everything else was like, I'm good at maths, I go do computers. Like, there was nothing there. I'd never really thought about anything. So it was a big deal. And then from doing street theatre, then you find in mainland Europe, street theatre's not all but dirty buskers, as I'm sure it is a little bit, but it's not as much. Like, so you go like to the French festivals, and you're just another actor who happens to specialise in working outside, and working in that field sort of opened my eyes about, you can do anything. And a lot of the street performers I knew, they weren't what I thought they were. Like, they were people often coming from different backgrounds like me, some of them coming more from the acting background and then ending up on the street, and some just incredibly funny people that was the medium that they had chosen. And that was a great sort of realization. And then from that, there were groups who would do slightly more theatrical street shows, and they had come to Canada and done the fringe theatres. And so that recognition that you can be quite theatrical on the street, but of course you can be a lot more theatrical in the theatre, strangely enough, opened up this thing that fringe theatre specifically would allow for performances. So that was when I used to work with this other guy, and we went to New Zealand, to Wellington Fringe, and we were doing street shows, and then we found this very nice theatre. It was only as I've become more experienced have I realised how great they were. It was Bats Theatre in Wellington. They even lent us money. Like, nobody else has ever. It was like, you can't flip. Well, okay, we'll pay for that. And it was like, it wasn't until I found out how it all worked that I found that was unusual. And we ended up, 10 o'clock every night. We wrote the show during these 10 days. Day 2, nobody showed. One person showed up, and we were like, look, we can't do a show to one person. And then she came back, and it turned out she actually at that point was running the comedy festival, and was a great publicist. So for following years, she publicized. She was very lucky in all these ways, and that kind of opened the door for the idea that theatre can just be a case of doing a show people like in a very simple setting. And we were talking about yesterday that very basic, because as a street performer, that was it. I do something you like, you give me money. Great, we're done. I don't then have to educate you. I don't have to bring you down, which is, I don't know much about theatre, but that seems to be, whenever I've seen theatre, I'm like, oh, you're killing a baby. Great. That's something for me to think about. Thanks a lot. So it opened up this idea that theatre can be that. So that's kind of like, I've come to theatre via the Fringe, not the other way around.
Yeah, interesting. That's really cool.
Just use that last bit.
All right.
Do you want me to say the whole thing again, but shorter?
No, it's
I
okay.
can. I totally can.
I'm sure you can.